Okay, so I'm trying to record a few slides before tomorrow's lecture, as I said in the today's lecture. So these things we have already discussed in today's lecture, if you remember. Now, the key thing that we need to ask, as ended today's lecture, that it's very easy to pursue self-interest. So everyone optimizes his or her own utility. And as Adam Smith himself propagated earlier, that if in a group one person or everyone in a group optimizes his or her own preferences, then the group's utility will go up. Now, this is actually true in most cases, but not necessary. As I said, if we are talking about a prisoner dilemma type of a game, then which is a both are losing, so lose lose sort of a scenario, then this sort of an argument will not hold. But in general, it will hold, and that was the idea behind Adam Smith propagation of laissez-faire, leave it to the market, invisible hand of the market, which will take care of all the problems and will autocorrect. But he made certain vague statements as well. Now, the core idea behind his propagation was that the price comes from the cost side or the supply side. So, price and cost of producing a good will come from the market structure, will come from efficient allocation of resources when farms behave competitively. Similarly, when there are multiple buyers who also are price takers, they will value the good, and so on and so forth. And government is not required to decide which goods to be produced and which not. Rather, the government needs to monitor what we call the production efficiency. Sorry, not the government needs to monitor the production efficiency, because if there is an inefficient producer, an efficient producer will come and force him out of the market. The only thing then left to the government is either relocation of resources among different sectors. Now the question is, why should the government go there? Now we have seen that, particularly when there are externalities, the government needs to do that. So we are now entering into the domain of what we call the welfare economics. Obviously, very superficially, and on record, I'm telling this is a very superficial way of starting welfare economics. Uh, Before we enter or start talking about welfare economics, let's talk a little about what we called Pareto efficiency. Now, by definition, Pareto efficiency means if there is a certain group of people, then you and there is a particular situation or a particular set of allocation or a particular set of distribution, whatever, then we'll say we can make a Pareto improvement if and only if I can make someone better off without making anyone else worse off. So the idea is Pareto optimality, which means I am into a particular situation where I just cannot make anyone better off, because the moment I want to do that, someone else will be definitely worse off. So we'll discuss this more in more details when we discuss our lecture in tomorrow's session. Uh, then there is a connection between Pareto efficiency and what we call individualism. Basically, we're talking about making some individual better off without making any other individual worse off. If I cannot do that, then obviously I'm in a state of optimality where it is very difficult to shift the system, because the moment I want to shift the system, then someone will be worse off. So I have attained Pareto optimality. Now, two theorems are very, very important, and these are what we call the fundamental theorems of welfare economics. So first and second. So let's discuss them very briefly. The first fundamental theorem says that any competitive equilibrium is Pareto efficient. Why? To understand that, let's go up a little bit and let's think about a particular situation like this. So I'm talking about two individuals, Robinson Crusoe and Friday. And this particular representation is what we call an Edgeworth box. So this origin belongs to Crusoe, and this O prime is that of Friday's. And it's a distribution of apples and oranges. So look, the width of the box is determined by that I have totally available oranges, and the vertical, the totally available apples. Yes. And as you can see, from 0 to 0 prime or O to O prime in the northeast direction, the utility of Crusoe is going up. On the other hand, from O prime to O, which is in the southwest direction, the utility of Friday is going up. Let's think about a particular allocation E here, where two indifference curves of Friday and Crusoe are tangent to each other. What is that? MRS1 is equal to MRS2, which means Crusoe's MRS, MU apples, MU oranges, is equal to MRS of Friday. Now look the moment, and you can think of another, what I can say, uh, allocation somewhere here, because at this point also there can be a tendency. So let's call that E prime. So E to E prime. Now this is a Pareto optimal situation. Okay, because the moment you want to move from E to E prime, Crusoe will be better off. Friday will be strictly worse off. Okay, correct. So now let's go back to the theorem. What we'll call that any competitive equilibrium. Now, where is competition here? I have started with some allocation. No production I have started with. I'm just talking about two individuals, some allocation. Obviously, if I like more apples than oranges, I will exchange with that. Suppose I'm Crusoe, then I'll exchange that with Friday. So the moment this exchange is complete, I am in a particular situation where MRS Friday equal to MRS Crusoe. So that's a perfectly competitive equilibrium, and it's Pareto efficient. Now, the second thing of the second fundamental theorem, what it will say that if I start with a particular Pareto efficient allocation, it can be achieved through some competitive markets mechanism with some initial redistribution. So basically, this is the flip side. So if I leave the market in a perfectly competitive state, then the equilibrium that will be reached is Pareto efficient. That's the first. Now, as you can see, remember those 2 points I talked about, E and E prime. Now, which point to choose from? Both are Pareto efficient. But look, in fact, this is the source of what I will call equity and efficiency. So you can think of a particular curve that connects O and O prime, which is nothing but the locus of all the possible tangencies between the indifference curves of Crusoe and Friday, right? Now, a point like here, where the cursor is, will be a more equitable distribution than E. Now, all points are efficient, but this a point somewhere here in the middle, where obviously one indifference curve of Friday is tangent to that of Crusoe, is more equitable. Both has more or less better, because at E, what you see that Crusoe has less number of oranges and apples, while Friday has more number of oranges and apples. So let's try to make these two boxes equal a little bit. So you move somewhere here, are more equitable. And this is the source of the debate, efficiency versus equity. Now, all these points are efficient. Now, the second welfare says that suppose somehow the market has reached E, but you can reach any other point which is Pareto optimal through competitive mechanism, but with some initial redistribution. So we'll understand that a little later in a much more detailed fashion, and we'll discuss that during our interactive session, not this recording session. So basically, the debate that hovers around is whether I talk about a centralized market mechanism or a decentralized market mechanism. Because if I leave it to the market, I do not intervene at all. Then what about the second welfare theorem? The market will automatically lead to one specific equilibrium. So there is no redistribution. But if I want to get an equitable point, which is also efficient, I need a government to do some initial redistribution, which is what we see in real life: tax the rich, subsidize the poor. How we are doing that? Obviously, I'll talk about that. Now, the first thing is why competition leads to Pareto efficiency. Now, look, I have a demand curve. So I again start with a very simple partial equilibrium framework. Think about a particular commodity, demand curve, supply curve, and that's it. Okay. So what is the demand curve? The marginal benefit that you get by consuming one extra unit is equated to what? The marginal cost of purchasing that extra unit, right? And what is the supply curve? To decide how much to be produced, the farms are equating the marginal benefit. What is the marginal benefit of the farms? The price they receive to the marginal cost of producing that extra unit. Now, efficiency means what? Marginal benefit and marginal costs equal to the price, right? Remember today's lecture I said, forget about this partial equilibrium also. Remember two goods to produce, two goods to be produced by two producers with labor and capital, which are two inputs, and there are two individuals who are going to consume, right? Basically, MRS1 by MRS2 equal to MRT, that MRS equal to MRT equal to relative price. That condition, this is exactly what you call economic efficiency. Now, this three types of efficiencies. Remember I said in today's morning lecture that there are three types of efficiencies. which we will require for Pareto efficiency. The first one is exchange efficiency. So goods produced should go to individuals who value them most. So value and price relationship. So if the marginal willingness to pay is higher for a particular good by a particular group of individuals, it should go to them because they value the good most. Then production efficiency. With particular set of resources, I cannot increase the production of one good without reducing the production of other. Basically, I'm operating on a production possibility frontier. And finally, what you call a product mix efficiency, which means the goods which are actually produced, number of goods which are produced, and the type of goods which are produced in an economy are those goods which are demanded or valued by the consumers. So if there is an economy take for example, what I can say, a very cold country like Greenland. So Greenland does not require to produce air conditioners because there is no demand for air conditioners in Greenland. But if I'm talking about Arab country, yes, there is a demand for air conditioners. So air conditioners should be produced at equilibrium. Now that origin to the northeast direction, the utility of Crusoe is increasing, and in the southwest direction, so the top right corner origin to the southwest direction, the utility of Friday is increasing, right? And I have all these tendencies. Let's plot them. So suppose this is a particular tangency condition, MRS1 equal to MRS2, where suppose this is 10 for Crusoe and 40 for Friday. Similarly, somewhere here it will be 40 for Crusoe, but 10 for Friday. So when I plot that, what do I get? I get what I call an utilities possibilities curve. Vertical axis, utility of individual one, vertical horizontal axis, the utility of the other individual. So as long as I have this MRS1 and MRS2, MRS1 equal to MRS2, this particular economy will operate on the frontier and will not operate in a particular point A, because point A is not Pareto optimal. From point A, keeping the utility of Crusoe, you can reach a point here which definitely increases the utility of Friday. So you keep Crusoe's utility fixed here, increase, reach a frontier. Similarly, you can reach here. And anywhere within this triangle sort of area where utilities of both can be increased. So basically, on the frontier, I'm having a Pareto optimal allocation. So the first implication is, or let's try to redraw the first welfare theorem. So if it's a competitive economy, it always operates on the frontier of the utilities possibilities curve. And the second welfare theorem is you can choose any point on the utilities possibilities frontier using competitive mechanism, but with some redistribution of initial endowments. And exchange efficiency, yes, this is exactly what I call that I talked about. Now, MRS should be equated. And what I get is a point like E or any point on as such, which joins 0 and O prime, that locus of all the points. And this is basically what we call the Pareto set. Okay. Now, similarly, in the production efficiency, you just replace apples and oranges in the vertical and horizontal axis, but just put the factors of production, suppose labor and land. And then you use the isoquants. So any point E is nothing but a point on the production possibility frontier where the two goods produced in the economy are apples and oranges. So basically what you get in a product mix efficiency, you connect these two, which is MRTS equal to MRS, right? So let's revisit the conditions. So marginal rate of substitution between two goods must be the same for all individuals, which is MRS1, where 1 is an individual and 2 is an individual. MRS1 equal to MRS2. That's the exchange efficiency. Production efficiency, MRTS equated with isoquants. And product mix efficiency is the equilibrium part where basically MRTS equal to MRS. And what is the competitive economies condition? MRS equal to relative prices equal to MRTS. Okay. Now let's talk about the second welfare theorem. Before you just read this part, let me explain it from this. So basically there are these two individuals, again, individual 1 and individual 2. 0, 1 is the what I call the origin of individual 1. 0, 2 is the origin of the second individual. And as you can see, all these tangencies are MRS1 equal to MRS2 over the two goods available by individual 1 and individual 2. But at the same time, what you get is a particular portion. Okay, let me leave this part later. I'll bring that price line. So let's suppose we start with a particular endowment. It's omega. So individual 1 is having this much of good 2 and this much of good 1. And obviously you can see from the box the rest belongs to individual 2. The question is this an optimal point? No. Any point on this particular, as you can see, which we call the contract curve, any point on this contract curve, which is nothing but a subset of the Pareto set, contained by the indifference curves of the two individuals passing through the endowment point. So if you reach any point here, you can make both better off. So any allocation on the contract curve is strictly Pareto superior to the endowment point. Now, the first welfare theorem tells you, suppose you start with omega, leave it to the market. Lead the system to attain up any point on this contract curve. Now, this point might be a little tilted, because tilted in the sense more of good and good 2 are accruing to individual 1 rather than individual 2. So let's think the planner thinks this is a better point. So you just take the initial endowment point. Sorry. You just take the initial endowment point. Do a little redistribution, come somewhere here, leave it to the market. Market again gets back to the same relative prices, you reach somewhere here. So this point, a point like this or somewhere where the cursor is right now, any point can be achieved through competitive mechanism, Walrasian mechanism, through initial redistribution. So that's the second welfare theorem. So I will stop here. I know this is quite sketchy when I'm talking about, but obviously you can understand this is just a pre-recording for tomorrow's lecture. There are a lot of things we have to discuss so that you can have a look before you come tomorrow, before you attend tomorrow's lecture. I just presented it so that it's better for you to have a look before you join. Okay, stop sharing, stop recording.